everybody, my name is Mason Khoo. I'm going to be helping with the reviews this month. I'm excited to see everyone's work, so let's jump in. This one's from Aaron Thomas. You said you were going for sort of warm winter day vibe, which I think you've captured pretty well here. If we take a look at your references here, I think there's still some things you can do to sort of capture this vibe a little bit better. You have this light, this other image that you submitted, which I assume is just this cool light coming in from the window, which I think is really effective in, the color temperature you chose is really evoking that winter's day. One thing I think it is fighting a little bit with this warm sort of top diagonal light you have over here. If you look at your references here, especially on the characters, they've chosen one main source. So if you look here, everything's mainly lit by this cool window light, and there's warm accents in the background and everything, but the characters aren't being affected too much by that. They have a main source. And same here on this right side, their main source is this, motivated by these fires and these warm lights, and they have a cool rim that puts them into the scene, but it doesn't really, affect their shaping. I think one thing that's happening in your image here is that, the two color temperatures are spilling into each other, and they're sort of giving a green skin tone to the characters, more so on the guy over here, but on her as well. You can see some sort of like green coming in. That might be something that you want to warm up in post or in the material. But I think, there's a few ways you can go about this. I think one way you can do it is sort of taking this light and wrapping it around and making this the main source, and then adding warm hits around them to sort of get this cozy vibe. I know this isn't a lighting thing, but you could, sort of warm up this furniture and maybe warm up this wall, and definitely you could try having these Christmas lights be warmer, so you get this sort of like, warm, cozy vibe with the practicals in the background, and maybe play around with, once you have this more stronger wrapping light of this window, smaller sources of warm light to kind of hit the characters selectively. You can even, if you did change these Christmas lights to warm, you could motivate, a soft, warm rim around the characters with that. And that might kind of help you simplify the image a little bit more, and kind of get to a point where, you have a clearer read of what's going on. Because I think what you have here is a great start, but on the characters is not a really clear shaping on them. I think for my taste at least, I would prefer more of a left to right or right to left sort of shaping on the characters, with just smaller hits maybe on their more specular skin. You can get some warm hits on there. But yeah, I think, take a shot at going there and kind of warming up the environment and wrapping this cool light around, and see what you get. The other thing with that is that, this outdoor light, especially if there's snow outside or something, is almost always going to be stronger than the indoor lights. I think normal warm indoor lights are much dimmer than sunlight is, even indirect sunlight. So it might feel a little bit more natural to kind of play up this really bright, cool light. If you felt like you wanted the image to skew towards warm overall, you could reverse those ratios. So, maybe pretend that there's a curtain over this window and sort of make this a little bit more diffuse, and then play up, shaping of warm light from right to left. That could also work. But I think, given this sort of vibe, what I would suggest is playing up that cool light and wrapping it more, and then playing with warm practicals around to get it looking cozy. Hopefully that helps. Thanks. So Erica has submitted a few assignments, which is awesome to see. So let's start off with this one. This is just lighting with some basic shapes, going off of this reference image, Last of Us. Very cool. Yeah, I definitely think you have the vibe. I like how you're thinking about the shadow shapes here playing on the wall, and these two opposite sources of light, which is kind of interesting. I would say, I think this shadow shape here, I'm not sure how you're achieving this, but it does feel a little bit unnatural, the way that it's sort of just like projected onto the wall in a crisscross pattern. I might find a way to sort of break it up like this. This one clearly looks like, you can imagine there's slats on out of frame on the right side that are creating these shafts of light, but it's not so regular like yours are. It could almost, if you were just looking at this right part of the image, it almost looks like it's maybe part of the backdrop is painted like that or something. So maybe think about breaking this up to be a little bit more organic. But in terms of the way you've lit these shapes, I really like what's going on down here with these simple shapes. The shaping on the cylinder especially is really nice, and I think you've sort of got it here. This is on this left side, there is creating this kind of strong rim on them, and then they're being lit sort of ambiently from this side, which you kind of have over here on this shape and on this spring as well. You might want to try to play up, not only this shadow shape here, but maybe a little bit of light that you can feel on the ball here, just a little bit of bounce, so you get a little bit more of this sort of soft shaping on them. I know it's difficult with these simple shapes, and I wouldn't want you to lose this sort of left to right shadow fill or key fill relationship, but just a little bit more light coming in from the right side might help sort of get you closer to this. And I'm not sure if you're just going for just white lights, but it might help also to sort of get this peachy color a little bit strong. You have it a little bit, but maybe a little bit stronger here, and then possibly like more of this greenish hue. Just a little bit coming from the right side might help sort of link these images together. But yeah, I mean, I think, as an exercise, I think, what's great about this is that it lets you think about, where the lights are coming from and the shapes of the lights, and I think you've achieved that, and I think it looks like you've learned a lot from this, so it's up to you if you want to do another iteration of this, but if not, I would say maybe move on to the more complex assignments. But yeah. This is also Last of Us? I think so. Very cool screenshot. So I think what you've got down here is pretty good. Again, I'm not sure if you're limited to white lights here, but maybe getting more of a cool color in your light might help sort of bring everything together. The biggest thing here, I think, is how white your windows are. It almost looks like you just painted it in there, which is okay, but I think going pure white, this is let's see. Yeah, I think it's almost pure white here. It's a little bit under, but looking at the reference, it's not that white, and I think usually we wouldn't want to clip the lightest parts of the image this much, because really when you're looking at this image for the first time, all you see are these 4 white shapes. If I make this really small, which is what I like to do a lot, like that's definitely the first read there, and then you see down here, which probably isn't what you're going for. So I would take these white shapes down in value, sort of match what's going on here, and then maybe even brighten this up just a little bit. But yeah, I do like how, you're letting this kind of go into shadow. It's really cool how they've allowed this right side of the image just to sort of blend together in the values there, and I think you have a similar feel going on over here, which is nice. So I think once you take care of, dimming down these white sources, I think that might help. Another thing that you could do, maybe if you want, after this is if you take these. I'm not sure if these are actual light sources in your 3D scene. It doesn't look like it. But you could hit this with a little bit more rim, these shapes with more rim from the back, just to motivate it a little bit. But yeah, awesome, great job. Here's another scene from Erica. You submitted 2 images. I think one is just with the sky. I'm just gonna use that one. So this is the reference over here. So, the first thing I noticed about this, I think the value is just very dark. If I make this black and white, you can see the difference between your values and this value. I think if we're talking about, if you think about how you see at night, your eyes will adjust to the darkness, and then you'll have a new range of values. So you can make things look dark without it actually being dark. That's one thing. I listened to a talk from a cinematographer who was talking about, I think modern trends in cinematography where the cinematographer makes it actually dark and you can't see anything. I think famously Game of Thrones, they did that, and people weren't too happy about it. I think you can make things look dark without actually having it be super dark, like this image does really well. So, if you're trying to get closer to this image, I would say play up the moonlight more. You could have it spilling in from the side and sort of hit maybe, this part of the building at a glancing angle. So you get this sort of like nice specular hits on the sides of the building. That might help you kind of vary. It might help you kind of vary up the values of this image. I really like what this lamp is doing though. It looks really nice and soft. I'm not sure if you have like some sort of bloom on there, but it looks really good. And I really like the feeling of these windows as well. I think it's just, playing up that moonlight more. And you can even go for a brighter sky, maybe a gradient. I know there's not that much sky up here, but a little bit brighter over here, just to motivate that moonlight a little bit more. But yeah, I think you have a great base here. I think it's just about, upping that key and sort of varying the values here, just so it's not looking super, super dark like this. If I zoom out here, eventually it just, you just see this one lamp and that's it. So yeah, I would just say play around with that moonlight and play around with different directions and see what you like. But definitely sort of get some varied values in there. I would also say, you're going a little purple here, and that could be what you want to do, which is totally fine. If you wanted to match this a little bit more, I would say that moonlight should be this sort of cyan color, and that will help with everything else. And this last one from Erica, this is a material study. I know you said you don't have the painting software, texture software at the moment, which is totally fine. We can talk about this as is. So, talking about this one at first, this is a classic sort of materials test. I would say maybe move the light. I think this top-down light isn't super flattering on any character. In my opinion, you should have the light sort of 3/4, almost getting that kind of Rembrandt triangle. Ooh, let's see if I can draw this. Sort of Does this make sense from the front like this? So you get more shaping on this side of her face, and you don't get this sort of line on her cheekbone, which can be kind of harsh in terms of appeal. If you place this light right, you can get this sort of Rembrandt triangle. You can look that up, but it's basically, you get this shadow shape, or sorry, this light shape on one of the cheeks, and then that usually coincides with some pretty nice shaping on this side of the face. This looks terrible, but you get the idea. That might help with the appeal of this character. I think, right now it's just difficult, as everyone knows from real life. If you get this harsh top-down lighting, no one looks their best in that lighting. So, yeah, I would kind of encourage you to play around with the angles of your key. For this material study, I think, again, I know you say you don't have the proper software yet, which is fine. I think the main thing standing out here is that everything seems so matte. I think, it's difficult with the skin tone right now. If you're going for like a more human skin tone, I think it's looking very one-dimensional in terms of like the color of it. And it is better here. I think you have some speck here, so I'm not sure what the difference is between this material and this material, but I think getting some more speck in the character could help a lot. You can see, especially with dark skin tones, playing up that speck on the character and shaping with that speck can really help you. Another thing with the skin tone here is that, generally, once you have that painting software, and once you're able to, the face is not just one color, and the skin is just not one color throughout the entire body. You really have these like zones of blood flow and, different parts of the face that have slightly different color temperatures, which I think they've done well in your reference. So once you're able to do that, you can start playing around with that if this is, human skin. And I think, same thing with the boots and, well, the skirt, the denim is pretty matte, so I think you're okay there. But the boots, there's this nice shine on the boots that you might want to try to replicate with more specularity in there. And the eyes as well, you kind of want more speck on the eyes. The teeth are a little bit, I know this isn't a model, but you might want to brighten them up slightly in this pose, and check out maybe what's going on with the subdivisions there, because they do look sort of a little too round, not like human teeth, and it's sort of causing a little bit of, it's bumping a little bit for me. So, but yeah, great. I think, I'm not sure which one of these is more far along. It seems like this one is, and if that's true, I would go with sort of this this setup that you have here over what you have here, because I think this is definitely more successful. But awesome, thanks. This one's from Shadow Crayon on the Discord. This is lighting with the basic shapes, and this Marcel the Shell image, which is very fun. Love this movie. So I think, you are leaning a little bit green on your image, and it could be a lot of things. It could be the monitor, and you're not seeing what you intend. But if you are comparing to this, I would say maybe going a little bit more towards that peachy color on your key might be good. And then I think you can see how soft the wrapping is around Marcel here. The light is back here, but they're definitely wrapping the light around more, which I think you could benefit from doing as well, and sort of getting the light to wrap further around here. So you have a soft sort of terminator here, but it's a little bit further along. That might help you kind of nail down the vibe a little bit more. I keep saying vibe, not sure why. And then, one thing I think that could help is getting this sort of cool blue color in the shadows. So just maybe a soft ambient light that is blue colored might get you there. Once you have that peachy color, I think it'll really kind of come together and look like this. There is a pretty strong vignette on this image, and if you wanted to do that, you could probably do that as well. You can see how the corners are darker and then it gets lighter as it goes in towards the middle, and that might kind of help. I really love putting that on my images because it focuses the eye where you want it to focus. So yeah, great job. This one's from Tanya on the Discord. I don't know what this is from, but it looks cool. Music video, maybe? But I love this reference image, and I think you've gotten really close with this. I really like how you've paid attention to the direction of this red color, and it's kind of coming from, it looks like a little bit lower than the green that's coming from the top, which is really cool. Yeah, I mean, if I were to nitpick, I would say maybe it looks like there's a little bit of haze in the background of this image, sort of like, you can see kind of over here, these blacks are not as dark as the blacks in front of her. And I think that really helps with such a flat composition like this. To get some haze in there, to get a little bit of depth in the image is really nice. So maybe playing around with that in some of these back shapes here, or even adding more shapes in the background and hazing them out. Maybe you have a little bit of that here, but yeah, that might help you a little bit. And I'm not sure exactly what you can do with just these simple shapes here, but there is this nice sort of really dark darks in her hair and her face here that you could try to find a way to get some of that in this shape, maybe moving this green light back slightly so you get a little bit darker of a core shadow on this sphere. But it's not going to be one-to-one. You don't have a human, you have a ball and a spring, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, I think you did a great job overall. I like how also you have this hint of a speck hit. It seems like, I'm not sure if you adjusted the material, but it does match pretty well with the speck of her skin. So yeah, great job. This one's from Vicious Rockstar on the Discord. This is a character lighting study. I think you've done a pretty good job here matching, the lighting situation. You said you didn't use an HDRI, which is, you're just placing lights according to the scene. I think, this isn't lighting related, but it's probably has something to do with the read of the image. I think he's quite big. If you look at, his foot in perspective is next to this rickshaw thing. Tricycle thing, and he looks huge compared to this bike. So I think actually shrinking him to be in relation with the things around him might help you sort of get more of a naturalistic image. I would also say your lights might be a little bit too bright. You can see on the face and these highlights on his vest, it is sort of clipping over here, and definitely we shouldn't be as bright as the source in some of these areas. So, the lights are pretty far away. I might come down with the lights and sort of not get quite as bright, sort of go towards maybe this value on the street as your brightest bright. And the last thing I would say about this is I think the shadows maybe feel a little bit too crisp. And the way that they blend with these shadows sort of gives it away. I know it's, you're on a plate that's not exactly matching what your render is doing, so, that's totally fine. I feel like it's not, it's going to be difficult to sort of blend it correctly, but I would say, trying to integrate the shadow a little bit more and make it a little less sharp might help you. But I do think, the biggest thing for me, at least when I saw it at first, is just the scale of the image. He just looks a little bit giant. So I think the perspective as well looks like you have a camera that's down near his knee looking up at him, which doesn't quite match the perspective of the background plate, which could be causing a little bit of issues with matching as well. So maybe trying to move the camera up a little bit just to look at him eye level might help you there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of color temperature and, the lighting, I think you've done a great job. I love this sort of green light motivated by this stop sign or the walk sign. That's really helping him blend in. And I think you've chosen the color temperatures of your street lights really well on the character. So yeah, great job. If you want to scale this down, I'd be interested in seeing if that works a little bit better in terms of the overall scale of the image. But if not, as a study, I think this is great. Good job. All right, this last one's from Carolina from the Discord. Apologize if it's Carolina. I assume it's Carolina. So let's take a look. So this is really nice. I don't have too much to say about this. I was looking at the Discord at the notes that the previous people were giving, and I think they're all spot on. I think you've done a really good job implementing everything. So everything I'm going to say is, I think, quite nitpicky, small things to polish rather than an overall change, because I think you're pretty much there. So I took a few screenshots here. So I really like what's going on in her eyes here with this IBL of the sunrise. I do think, I could be wrong. I think that it sometimes looks like your IBL is sort of slanted a little bit, where it looks like the horizon line is very crooked. So, I generally, with this sort of thing, if you have control over the speck in her eyes, I would soften this out a little bit, because I don't love seeing, personally, I don't love seeing this hard line sort of bisecting her eye. It gets a little bit distracting, in my opinion, especially when they're moving around a lot, to see this sort of line cutting their eye like that. I would maybe blur that out a little bit in the image, and just focus on using this sun as a speck hit on the eye. Yeah, I think there's a few instances here as well where, just keeping on the subject of eyes, for him, he gets this really wide speck on his eye, like here, where it does kind of take away from his expression here. So I would I really like how it reads like closer to the front of the sequence when you're using this sun as motivation for the eye speck. So I might try to get that in his eye, make this smaller, and sort of allow you to read his expression without washing out his eye like this. Another small thing, I think the eye whites is something that we pay attention to at the end when we're polishing. I think on him it looks pretty good, but maybe it's a little bit bright. If you look at people's eye whites, they're usually not white. They're usually kind of warm gray. On her, I think it's feeling a little bit too blue, maybe greenish blue. And, it's easy for it to swing, to look one way or another, just because it's contrasted against this really warm skin tone. But I might sort of warm up her eye whites a little bit if you have control over that, and then darken his, just so that they feel like they match a little bit better in the scene. Yeah, I think, we're really always looking at their faces and their eyes, so you kind of just, if you have the opportunity, want to polish that area as much as possible. The last thing I'll say, I think, is, again, it all looks great, and I really love the sky rim that you have here. This cool is really nice on them, and they really look like they're bathing in this warm sunrise or sunset. I would say, looking at their skin tones, he is reading a little bit yellower than she is. Um, I, I can buy that he's paler, but I think on this key side, I might just go a tiny bit warmer on his skin tone just to sort of link them a little bit more, because she gets really warm, especially when she turns into the sun there. And I think he's remaining a little bit paler and more yellow. That's up to you. If you intended this character to have this more sort of yellow tone, that's totally a valid thing to do as well. So just something that I noticed just looking at this for the first time. But yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty much there. I don't have too much to say about this. Your materials are reading really well. Your shaping is really nice. It's not easy, I know, to sort of get this nice shaping on the characters that feels natural when they're wearing a hat. Um, the hat is a huge problem a lot of the times. So you've done a really good job getting that to read and making it everything feel natural. So great job. Last thing I'll say, maybe I said last thing last time, but I'm just noticing it now. This is also maybe a taste thing, but I we generally don't let the mouth get this black. I would sort of go in there and you can even do it at the end in Nuke or whatever comp tool you're using and lift the really dark darks and warm them up just a tiny bit. It should still be super dark. Don't get me wrong. It's not. I'm not saying like lift it to the color of these teeth or anything, but maybe just warm it up slightly and lift it by like, I don't know, 2%, just so it's not this black hole in the middle of their face. That might help you a little bit with that, but that's a small thing. Because you get the light here, it's not reading quite as black on her, I think. But yeah, super appealing, really nice work. I love it. Great job.